Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Dad's Reading. Very special to me, definitely, because, I am reading my own book, Full Circle, that I self published last year using Author House. And you can find anywhere you enjoy buying books, especially these days, probably Amazon, or if you're in the US, Barnes and Noble, or wherever you buy books online. That's where you can find it. Also on authorhouse.co.uk and authorhouse.com. Um, just a little bit about it. I have been thinking of writing this book for more than a decade. Um, I have had the title Full Circle in my head since then as well. And yeah, then last year when the pandemic hit, I just thought, you know what? It's time. It's time to give it a go. So I hope you like it. I'm currently writing the second one because I know it's a bit thin but it's my first book. So I'm glad that I got to where I got. Yeah. So let's go, huh? Um, I've dedicated this book to my son Harry. And the quote in the beginning of the book is to my son Harry, no dream is ever too big to accomplish. So, Chapter 1, Wake Up. Static. An automated voice. We are approaching the target system. Dropping out of hyperspace. Wake up protocol engaged. The Celestial dropped out of hyperspace on the outskirts of the target system. All systems sprang to life. Screens lit up and the lighting changed from emergency lighting to full. The crew and passenger stasis pods lit up and initiated the wake-up protocol. Sensors were activated to scan the nearby area, while automated drones were launched from their base to gather more detailed information about the makeup of the target solar system. The computer started to state the standard procedures for after waking from stasis. Crew members and passengers, be sure to keep your heart rate at a low pace. Sudden movements are not advisable. Prepare for medcheck in medbay with Dr. K and his team. In her quarters, Dr. Dana Jones slowly gained consciousness. The screen in her stasis pod lit up, but she kept her eyes closed. She wanted to savor the peace and quiet just a moment longer. You have a personal message, Dr. Jones. She pressed the play button prompted on the chamber screen. Her father's face appeared. I hope this message finds you well. By the time this message reaches you, you should have safely arrived in System 50L001. I know you went there against my recommendation, but I was never able to stop you once you made up your mind. We did not leave on the best of terms, but I want you to know that I still wish you luck. Please do not be too disappointed if you do not find what you are looking for. The system has been deemed uninhabitable for more than 25,000 years. I have attached a software update for your Windows device. It should enhance the clarity of the readings by 3.5%. Good luck, my child, and Godspeed. A tear rolled down Dana's face. And yes, I'm going to refer to her as Dana or Dana because it's okay, you know, creator's intent. Even though her father and herself would often argue about anything and everything, she still missed him greatly. Her late mother theorized that this was down to them being very similar, maybe too similar, and Dana had come to the conclusion that her mother was not wrong. Her father was in his final cycle, and she wished that she would be able to see him again before the end. A knock on the door shook her out of her thoughts. Come in, Dana said, still trying to shake the tiredness of a long stasis jump out of her head and body. A young lieutenant entered the room. Dr. Jones, I'm sorry to interrupt. The captain would like to see you ASAP, he said, very to the point. It's okay, Lieutenant. Tell the captain I will meet him in the office in an hour, she said while her eyes were still closed. Whew. Yes, ma'am. Can I get you anything? He said with genuine kindness in his voice. No thanks, Lieutenant, she asked. Mitchell, ma'am. No thanks, Lieutenant, she asked. Mitchell, ma'am, he replied. No thank you, Lieutenant Mitchell. I will be fine as soon as I get a bit of food and caffeine into me. Now leave so I can get ready, she said with a very tired smile. Yes, ma'am. The lieutenant left and Dr. Jones stretched her aching limbs. Dear Lord, I will never get used to traveling in stasis, although it's still more pleasant than the regen process. She got up and slowly made her way into the cleansing unit. The personal computer, or PUP as she named it, of Dr. Jones greeted her. Good morning, Dr. Jones. It is now 0515 hours. Dana looked up into her mirror and took a deep look into her eyes. PUP, how many times do I have to tell uh, how many times do I have to tell you not to remind me how early it is? She said, half yawning. It is my duty not to withhold any information from you. I see you have received your father's message, Pop stated. I did. I just wish he could have shared a bit of my enthusiasm about this system. I know we will find something, she replied. Enthusiasm is something that you do not seem to have a lack of, Dr. Jones, the computer said in his neutral voice, although Dana could swear that he was trying to be sarcastic. It made her smile, as it reminded her of her father's dry humor that only she seemed to understand. She went into the shower unit and had a calming ultrasonic shower. It always helped her muscles loosen up and prepare for whatever lay ahead. She exited the chamber and stood in front of the mirror and thought, at least one does not age while in stasis. She turned the handle of the sink in front of her and splashed some cold water onto her face. Pop, contact Bruce and ask him to meet me in the mess hall after his med check. We've got a lot to do, and we better get started. It seems he's still asleep, Dr. Jones, Pop stated while Dana was getting dressed. Well, then let's wake him. This time we'll use Protocol 3, I think, she said with a grin on her face. Yes, Dr. Jones. Initiating fire alarm in Dr. Kraft's room. Dana started counting. 3, 2, 1. A clearly annoyed Bruce was visible on screen. The alarm was still active. Hell's bells and buckets of blood, Dana! I hate you sometimes, Bruce said, annoyed. Oh, hey, Bruce, you're up. Get ready and meet me in the mess hall in 20 minutes, Bruce started to complain. Tell your bloody AI assistant to turn off that damn alarm. You know they always say to take it slow after waking. Bye, Bruce. Donna disconnected the call and left her quarters to get the med check over with. The bridge was already busy with all personnel on deck, and each station was being double and triple checked to ensure it was in proper working order. Captain Lucas was delighted to see the bridge crew beating their wake-up record by 2.3 seconds. Main systems check were also in progress, and a steaming cup of his favorite tea was on his chair's armrest. Lieutenant Smith, give me shipwide. The captain looked at the newest member of the bridge crew with a stern expression. Aye, Captain Lucas, you've got shipwide, a young lieutenant said, with a light nervous quiver in his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have safely arrived at our destination. System and med checks are well underway. I expect your reports on my table by 0900 hours. Carry on. The captain signaled Lieutenant Smith to cut the connection with a nod. His second in command, Dr. Cesario Torres, approached him. Good morning, Captain, Torres said and saluted him. Good morning, Commander Torres. You have done a fine job improving the wake-up time. The crew seems in tip-top shape, the captain said with a faint smile. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. How do you like the new stasis units? According to Mr. Welsh, they are 17% less straining on the body and 50% less straining on the mind. Torres recited the information provided by Peter Welsh, chief stasis engineer. Give my regards to Mr. Welsh. If you'll excuse me, I have matters to attend to. Commander Torres, you have the bridge. The captain took one more look at the busy crew, took his cup of tea, entered his office, and closed the door. Commander Torres sat down in the captain's chair and was pleased to see that everything seemed to be going according to plan. The ship was floating through the vastness of space, sunlight gleaming along the edges of the hull. From afar, she may have seemed like a faintly twinkling star among countless stars in the universe. Only by doing a closer inspection one might have seen a few dinks and scratches where she had encountered small objects which interrupted the pristine look. The old gal, as the captain liked to call her in a casual moment, had served the crew well beyond the original intended lifetime, and would continue to do so as long as she could. The crew, especially Lieutenant Commander Monterey and Chief Bigsby, would make sure of that. They both shared a familiar fondness or similar fondness, for this inanimate object, just like Captain Lucas. The human fleet was too far away to even consider dismantling, scrapping her for parts, and to build a new ship. So, this is it, thought the captain. I hope this is not one of those wild goose chases Dr. Jones has come to have a reputation for. Could this really be the planet we once called home? It has been so long since our ancestors last stepped foot on it that might not even be suitable for our people. He let his mind wander among the stars for a few moments while sipping his tea, a ritual of sorts that he had adapted from his former captain. Admiral Hilary McLean had taught him everything that made him a great captain, and she taught him well. The burden of leadership always weighs heavy on the shoulders of those who lead. That was never reason enough to make the people feel any less valuable than the captain. This was one of the first lessons she had taught him when he became her first officer. First initial reports started to arrive on his computer screen. He could see its reflection in the window. He took a deep breath, turned, and sat down at his desk. The preliminary scans of the system revealed nothing out of the ordinary. Sun, planets, moons, asteroids, and space debris, all moving through space in a well-established dance which had been going on for millions of years. Drones, which had been sent out to the celestial bodies to get a more detailed analysis, were doing their job well. He must remember to congratulate Lieutenant Commander Monterey and Dr. Kraft for a job well done. Something was odd about the gas giant. At least that is what Science Officer Lieutenant Berg felt after the first data started to come in. Captain Lucas had to agree with Lieutenant Berg for now, but wait until all data had been collected and analyzed. Bruce was glad that the routine checks of Chief Medical Officer Dr. Takei had been clear, although his slight hypochondria made him doubt the absolute validity of any type of medical results. When he entered the mess hall, he found Dana at her favorite table, her face, as always, glued to her research on her pad, focused like a laser on what she was reading. He made his way to the nearest nutrition unit and ordered eggs, bacon, and strong black coffee. The machines were able to produce fairly accurate versions of these items. Not that he ever tasted the real thing to make any kind of comparison. Larger ships of the fleet had been fitted with hydroponic gardens so that the crew could at least grow and eat fresh vegetables. This ship was a mid-sized science vessel and was not afforded such luxuries. Still, the food tasted good enough and included all nutrients a human body required, so there was little to no reason to complain. He sat down opposite of Dana without her noticing. No glance or other type of movement indicated that she was aware of his presence. So he did what he always did. He enjoyed most of his breakfast, savoring every bite. The taste receptors always needed to adjust after a journey in stasis. Then, when he was ready, he made her aware of his presence. Bruce to Dana. Bruce to Dana. Dana, are you there? She glanced over her pad and realized she wasn't alone. Being who she was, she said, "You know that I'm aware that you say nothing so that I leave you eat your food in peace, right?" All he could see were her eyes and raised eyebrows. Bruce gave her a look as if to say, "Yeah, right." "So what's on the agenda?" he asked. "I'd like you to run simulations using the update my dad sent over in his last message. Please be thorough. I really need the test to go well. Captain Lucas won't let me field test the window otherwise," she said with a stern tone to her voice that Bruce knew so well. He played along and replied with, "Aye, ma'am," and saluted her. They both finished their meals, chatting away like they always have done. Afterwards, they left the mess hall. Dana made her way to the captain's office, while Bruce made his way to the lab. Hallways. Seemingly never-ending hallways, full of doorways, bulkheads, screens, people, and lights, endlessly repeating over and over again. To some, this may have been a maddening fact, but to Bruce, it was a constant flow of calm and unity. When he needed to think, or sometimes just because, he would wander these hallways for hours on end. That's what got him the nickname Ghost. Now, he wasn't a superstitious person, and he probably couldn't be further from it if he tried, but he had to admit that it made him feel rather cool. Normally, only the military types received nicknames if they did something special or heroic while on a mission. Plus, it gave him a chance to play pranks on those who called him that. His partner Jake did not like it at first. He had assumed that Bruce was being mocked for his albino complexion. Jake actually was quite proud of Bruce for not having his genetic code altered to have it removed. Bruce didn't mind Jake standing up for him, gave him a wonderful, warm, and fuzzy feeling of being loved and protected. Their relationship had been going on since the last regen cycle. It was the stuff of romantic novels where they both locked eyes across the room and knew in their souls that they were made for each other. All that was missing was some kind of romantic music playing in the background like in the movies they both enjoyed so much. They both made sure that their new bodies were as closely modeled after their previous bodies as possible. To each other, they were simply perfect. When Bruce arrived in the lab, his colleagues were already busy working on whatever project they were assigned to. An orchestra of blinking lights, screens, and 3D images, which might have seemed like total chaos to a layman. When he approached his station, his AI assistant Sheldon sprang to life. "Greetings, Dr. Kraft. You have 3 unread messages. Would you like me to read them for you?" Bruce replied, "Not necessary. I will check them later. Please give me the rundown of preliminary scans of this system. Oh, and please make me a cup of nice coffee while I wait." "Milk and 3 sugars as always," Sheldon asked. "Make it 4 sugars and no milk. This time the stasis really seems to have taken a lot out of me." A cup appeared in the beverage dispenser, and shortly after, hot coffee was pouring into it. The sugars popped onto a tray next to the cup. Bruce took the cup, added the sugars, lifted the cup, and took a deep breath to inhale the comforting aroma. He then sat down in his chair, doodling on his pad and sipping his coffee for a few minutes, savoring every last bit of it and feeling that caffeine provided the energy he felt he was missing. "Dr. Kraft, I have completed my task. The system consists of an average star with 9 planets, one of which is a gas giant, and 2 in the Goldilocks zone, roughly 170 natural planetary satellites, and an asteroid belt." Bruce didn't look up from his pad and replied, "So nothing out of the ordinary, just another standard system?" He could have sworn that Sheldon took a moment longer than usual, but that could just be him adjusting to living in real time again. He decided to not pay too much attention to it, for now. "The drone data is still being processed, but it does seem that way," Sheldon replied. "Okay, well, then let's get to it and see if we can't find what we're looking for. Sheldon, let's focus on the 2 Goldilocks planets, but let us not ignore the lovely gas giant," Bruce said with a wink. "Your fondness of gaseous objects will always make me smile," Jake said, while wrapping his arms around Bruce. "Well, it's also part why I love you, my lovely tooting man," Bruce replied and kissed his husband's wrist while boyishly grinning. Generally, marriages ended once a cycle was complete, but they both just could not be without each other, so they renewed their vows in Elysium and had made plans there to do so in reality again. "We can't all smell as nice as you, my love," Jake replied while smelling Bruce's neck. "I do so love your visits, but I have to start focusing on my task at hand or Dana will go mental," Bruce replied half jokingly. "Okay, but don't be late for dinner. First dates with you after stasis are always something special." Jake kissed Bruce lovingly and left the lab. For a moment, Bruce kept his eyes shut to savor the kiss of the love of his life and all the wonderful emotions that came with it. He then took a deep breath, opened his eyes, and started to analyze the data in front of him. The engine room was as busy as ever. Crew members of all shapes, ranks, and sizes were doing their job well, like a well-oiled machine. Full system checks of all essential and non-essential system required all hands on deck. Ensign Patrick Barkley was rushing from station to station. His particularly high intellect and energy made it easy for him to do multiple tasks at once and help others where he could. He was the one of 5 naturally born humans still in their first cycle on the ship. There were many drugs that he could get prescribed for his diagnosed ADHD, but he wanted to spend his full first cycle as unaltered as possible. He had started to attend Counselor Priaconal's meditation sessions in Elysium during stasis and had found it helpful. A mind like his was in danger of getting lost far faster in Elysium. Lieutenant Commander Monterey and Chief Bixby weren't a fan of his multitasking. But Ensign Barkley did not shy away from taking responsibility when making a mistake and learning from it, so they let him off the hook for now. If he continued like this, he may replace them all in a few years' time. Lieutenant Commander Charles Monterey, who was known to his friends as Monty, was talking to Chief Bixby in the meeting room. "So, Chief, how are we looking?" Monterey asked. The old gal is looking pretty good for her age. There are some unusual readings coming from the drive, but Lieutenant McGinnis and Lieutenant Mohammed are on it, the chief replied. Traveling at the speed of light and beyond brought its own special challenges with it due to the laws of physics altering slightly, but all in all was safe. Some unusual readings in the drive and energy systems weren't anything out of the ordinary. Monty's communicator buzzed. Monterey here. He answered the call, and Dana's face appeared on the screen. Hi, Monty, it's Dana. How are the preparations going for the field test on my window device? Dana said with warmth in her voice. Chief Bigsby here. Dana, we're still running diagnostics on all systems, and from what I gather from your specs, there may be some issues integrating your device fully into our energy systems. The concern in his voice was nothing that Dana wanted to hear, but she knew she was right, and he was right, and his love for accuracy was what had kept this ship in the shape it was. I trust in your judgment, Chief, and will be down as soon as I can to assist with the integration. Monty gave the chief a knowing look. Let's say in an hour, and please don't be late, Dana. We're on a tight schedule, Monty said with a fatherly sternness in his voice. Aye, aye, father, she said, saluting with a wink, and the call ended. Chief, please keep an eye on her. She might have her heart in the right place, but her enthusiasm may make her disregard safety for results, Monty said with slight concern in his voice. Monty, like my father used to say, it's better to check once too often than too few, the chief said, and left the meeting room to get back to work. And that was the first chapter of my first book. Yeah, it's kind of cool writing this just as a bit of background information, making of information, or whatever you want to call it. When I started writing this book, I had sat down and just researched, how long novels generally are, and the result was 60 to 90,000 for a standard kind of sized novel. 90 seemed seemed a lot, seeing that I had never done anything like this, and the longest stories in school that I'd written were probably like 10 pages or so. So I thought to myself, you know what? Let's aim for 60 and see where we get, where we get to. So the first day was really hard. I think I wrote 150 words in the first day, and the second day as well. And then the longer I did it, because I got up early in the morning before, anything had to be done, let's say 5 or 6, and just sat down, started writing and rewriting, and yeah, checking for spelling mistakes. I found a few in the first chapter still, but that's what happens when you're your own editor. Maybe someday I have enough to, pay someone to edit these things for me. But for now, I'm the writer and I'm the editor as well. Yeah, and then I noticed that every day it seemed easier to write, so I then wrote, like 200 words, and then 300, and then 500, and just, wrote more and more each day that I was happy with. And then I think in the end I wrote 1,500 words each day. I know it's not much for like professional writers where they're like, oh, I need to write 3 chapters today or whatever or more, and they write them like probably 3 times the length that I do. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a good outlet, and that's why I'm enjoying writing the second part as well. But I'm taking my time with the second part. I've been writing on it for a few, like, a month and a half now or so. I'm maybe 10% through. I'm aiming for 80 to 90,000. But I just want to like get it right. So yeah, that it's fun and entertaining and picks up on an interesting place where this book ends. And I hope you guys enjoy how this book or where this book ends. I think my biggest inspiration were shows like Star Trek, of course, and Stargate was a great inspiration as well. And then, of course, names-wise, like, I mean, you can see like Dana Jones is basically Dana Scully or Dana Scully from X-Files, and Jones, of course, Indiana Jones, because, and Bruce is Bruce Banner. Kraft, I just thought I'd give him a German name, and Kraft sounded like, strength, but he's more crafty up here than with his muscles. um, yeah, so you know what? Let's read the second chapter as well. It's nice. At least I think so. And this way I can, read to you. Because I would have loved to done like live readings in a public place. Of course, with COVID, that doesn't seem to be happening for probably another year or so, maybe even longer, depending on how the numbers are. But let's get back to the world of Full Circle in Chapter 2, Discovery. The drones, glistening darts of silver, were making their way across the solar system, passing planets, moons, and other celestial bodies, each nearing their destination more and more. Once they arrived at their destination, they split up into smaller units, each equipped with the newest scanning technology developed by Bruce. Once the orbital scans were complete, each smaller drone would start to collect samples of atmosphere, soil, and scans of flora and fauna. Given enough time, they would be able to fully catalog a planet. Monty and Bruce had been working on them in Elysium during their time in stasis. Although the virtual realm was as close to real as it can be, actually field testing the drones was a totally different thing. Technology had progressed far beyond anything humans could have imagined in days gone by. Life, real life, with all of its wondrous chaos, could still not be replicated 100%. There were many cases of people accepting this less than perfect virtual reality as real for the imperfect perfection of the real world. For them, living in a world that you could design and alter within certain limitations to your own preference was far more desirable. If your consciousness was not returned to a body within a year, adverse effects were to be expected. Some people went mad, some stayed so long that their consciousness disappeared into nothingness. There were ongoing debates among scientists, programmers, and theologists on what actually happened to those who disappeared. Did the soul have an unknown limited time that it could be bound in one place? Did those who disappeared find a way to die in Elysium, or did their consciousness integrate into the code? For the time they were in this virtual world, they essentially did become code, so it was a possibility that they themselves found a way to be integrated. The far scarier option was that Elysium itself or an unknown entity integrated those who chose to stay. Monty had been on the brink once before, but nothing had made him but something had made him choose to enter another cycle in a new body. He took a deep breath and squeezed the armrest of his chair while thinking, I'm glad I chose to return. With that in mind, he got up out of his chair, straightened his uniform, and left the meeting room. Dana arrived on the bridge early, which she rarely did. The crew was busy fulfilling their duties at their stations. The view screen showed varying images of the solar system. A gas giant with an immensely large red spot and what looked like a hexagonal storm at its north pole. From spending countless hours with Bruce, she knew that the latter was quite common. The next planet was one with a complex system of moons and rings. Then there was a red planet with oceans of blue and a blue planet with large green land masses, and both caught her interest. Those must be the planets in the Goldilocks zone. Where there is water, there surely is life, and due to that fact, both may be supporting life forms and could be the origin of humankind, she thought. That filled her with excitement, and her thoughts started to spin out of control. Calm down. Take a deep breath. If you seem too eager from the get-go, the captain will not take you serious, Dana thought to herself. She pressed the buzzer of the captain's office. Come on in, Captain Lucas stated over the intercom. Dana entered and said, saluting, or more so trying to salute, Dr. Dana Jones, reporting for duty. At ease, Dr. Jones, the captain said with a smirk. He knew the salute was meant respectful, but also slightly sarcastic. He was best friends with her father for 3 cycles and watched her grow up, so he didn't really mind her playfulness. Dana sat down opposite of the captain. Good morning. I'm happy to report that preparations for the first test of my window device are well on their way. Bruce is running simulations and Chief Bigsby is working with his team to ensure the device is properly integrated into the ship's power systems. Dana stated as serious and official sounding as she could. Dr. Jones, sounds like everything is going the way that you want it to, Captain Lucas said with an almost fatherly look on his face. Of course, Captain. This could be the most important scientific discovery in all of our history. If I'm right, then my device will let us look back into our past and find out why humans left Earth. I will not let anything in the universe get in the way of this test. Dana said, very enthusiastic. Look, Dana, I am glad that you are so excited to make progress and test your device. Your father and I agree with you that a successful test could be groundbreaking. Please also take into account that this could be the wrong system or what you have not thought about or that you have not thought about all eventualities. Dana did not like the sound of the captain's voice, although she knew he had a point. I've been running calculations with Bruce and the chief for a cycle now. In the real world and Elysium, my device will work. I am sure of it. She had the glimmer in her eye that her dad also had when nothing known or unknown in the universe could make him uncertain of his goal. Oh, Jim, I wish you were here, Captain Lucas thought to himself. All right, Dana. You have my permission to go ahead with the test. Let Commander Torres know which planets you deem most likely to be our target, and we'll set a course. Thank you, Captain Lucas. You will not regret trusting me, and I promise I will always keep my promises. She gave him a big smile and left the captain's room. Sorry, I misread that. I'll read it again. Thank you, Captain Lucas. You will not regret trusting me, I promise, and I always keep my promises. She gave him a big smile and left the captain's room. Walking through the hallways of the ship, possibilities of what she may discover raced through her head. Eek, I'm so excited, Dana thought with a massive grin on her face. She passed many members of the crew without noticing them. She turned a corner and bang! It happened. She ran full force into Ensign Daniel Crusher. Both fell to the floor, holding their heads where they had hit against each other. Ouch! Why don't you... hello, Dr. Jones. I'm sorry for bumping into you, Daniel said nervously. Dana rubbed her head. Don't be silly. I'm sorry. I was someplace else and should have watched where I was going. Dana got up and helped Daniel to his feet. Look, why don't make it up to you? Why don't I make it up to you and buy you a drink in the patch? Just tell Leonard to put it on my tab, Dana said apologetically. Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Jones, Daniel said, still feeling very embarrassed he had bumped into the lead scientist of the ship. He picked up his pad and hurried on his way. Dana turned her head and gave Daniel a little glance. Then she continued her way to the lab without any interruptions or bumping into someone. Bruce was fully immersed into the analysis of the drone data. His hands moved back and forth between varying screens and 3D images. There was a certain beauty to his flow of working. Hey, Bruce. Making any progress? Dana said as she came up to his station. Of course I'm making progress, but do you have any idea how much data is coming in? The drones I designed are capable of collecting more than ever before, he said, annoyed with a hint of pride for his own achievement. You mean the drones you and Monty designed, right? She said teasingly. Bruce gave her a snide look. Well, he did help, but they are based on my original design and specifications. You are in luck, though. The 2 planets in the Goldilocks zone have a breathable atmosphere and seem to be supporting primitive life. I'd say they are good to go for your field test, but let me run a few more simulations with the new data that is coming in, Bruce said matter-of-factly. Great! That is very good news, Dana replied. There is one thing, though. You see that gas giant here? Bruce pulled up a 3D image of the gas giant with general information next to it. He then went on to pull up more detailed information. You see these readings here? I've never seen anything like it and can't explain how they came to be. Dana took a few steps closer to the image and the readings. Maybe the sensors of your drones are malfunctioning? She asked. No, they're working well within their parameters, Bruce said, slightly annoyed. Bruce, come on. Even you, the great Bruce Kraft, can make a mistake. Do me a favor and check the drone once it returns. Dana said. Fine. I will recall it early just to be on the safe side. Just because I know how much this whole thing means to you. Happy now? Bruce replied. Very much. Thank you, Bruce. Let me know as soon as you're done, please. She gave Bruce a kiss on the cheek and left the lab. Chief Bigsby was climbing the Jeffries tube with Ensign Barclay. Chief Bigsby, may I inquire as to why we are climbing around in here? The ensign asked with slight anxiety in his voice. I need to start calibrating the energy nodes so that Dr. Jones's device can be properly integrated into the ship's systems, and you are helping me to do so, the chief explained. He could hear Barclay try to calm himself down by taking deep, slow breaths. Barclay, don't tell me you are claustrophobic, the chief asked teasingly. I wouldn't think so, Chief. I don't fear tight spaces, just prefer a more spacious environment, Barclay said, trying to hide his anxiety. Thanks for the clarification. Barclay, do you know why these tubes are called Jeffries tubes? The chief asked. Well, I believe it was named after a person called Jeffrey, Barclay replied. That is true, and Lieutenant Michelle Jeffrey was the first person to die in one, the chief said bluntly. Not many got the chief's dry humor, maybe a bit dark humor, and he wasn't sure that Barclay would, but as long as he kept him talking, he wouldn't think of the tubes. What? You can't be serious, Chief. Things are normally named after their inventors or the person who discovered whatever it was that they discovered, Barclay replied and gripped onto the ladder tighter. They had to be named after someone, and what better way to honor a brave lieutenant who gave her life to save her ship and crew? The chief asked. I see. You left out that bit of trivia to scare me, right, Chief? Barclay replied, and his voice and breathing sounded far more relaxed than before. You got me, Barclay. If I don't watch out, you may be smarter than me someday soon, and I'll have to retire. With that, they had arrived at the first node. Now watch closely, because we have to split up from here to get the job done in time. The chief opened his toolbox and took out various devices to scan and adjust the node to make the energy pattern of the Windows device match the energy pattern of the Windows device. It took him about 10 minutes to finish. So, did you get all that? He asked Barclay inquisitively. You forget, Chief. I have an eidetic memory, Barclay said proudly. Great, then let's see who finishes first. You take the 10 surrounding the top of the engine room, and I'll take the ones at the bottom. Whoever wins pays for lunch. With that, he spurned the enthusiasm of Ensign Barclay, and he was gone in a flash. That kid. I better hurry to have a fighting chance. He may take longer making the adjustments, but I'm not as young and agile as I used to be, the chief thought to himself while on his way to the next energy node. The patch was the lounge where you would go if you wanted a drink and get away from the mess hall food. Leonard and his wife Asami ran the place. They were planning a special meal for the captain to get a chance to convince him that converting one of the storage bays into a greenhouse. Especially Asami felt that the artificially created fruit and vegetables lacked that soul fresh produce had. She ran the kitchen, and Leonard loved her cooking. He could not imagine how it could get any better, but if it made her happy, he agreed to help get her point across. He was the barkeep, and very much looked like he could have been taken out of the classic movies he loved and transported into reality. Bit burly, suspenders, and a well-trimmed beard and mustache completed the look. Ensign Barclay was sitting at a table and was waiting for the chief. He was able to beat the chief by a few minutes. It would have been more, but he wanted to impress the chief, so he followed his example and double and triple checked everything before moving to the next node. When the chief had emerged from the Jeffries tube, he had a bright red head and tried to downplay how out of breath he was, but he didn't seem that surprised to see Ensign Barclay waiting for him at his station. I'll see you at lunch in the patch, Ensign, the chief had said, and then left to catch his breath. Barclay had ordered prune juice for the two of them. It was the chief's favorite drink, but Patrick didn't really understand why. He felt the taste was odd at best with a bit of sweetness. When the chief entered the patch, Patrick waved at the chief to get his attention. Ensign Barclay, twice in one day? It seems I need to hit the gym to keep up with you, he said jokingly, although he was used to him being early for everything. To be fair, Chief, I always plan to be where I need to be at least 5 minutes before the actual time. That way, even if I should be running late, I'm always on time. While we are on the topic of time, may I ask what Dr. Jones is trying to achieve with her device? The ensign was barely able to hide his curiosity. What he did not tell the chief was that he had already studied any and all information he could gather about the device. The chief took a large gulp of his prune juice. Well, Ensign, I do appreciate your interest in the project. Dr. Jones's enthusiasm for her project seems to have spread far and wide throughout the ship. I have seen in your files that you have written quite a fascinating paper on the one electron universe. Care to elaborate? The chief asked and took a sip from his juice. Certainly, Chief. This age-old hypothesis states that all electrons and positrons in the universe are actually a manifestation of a single entity moving backwards and forwards through time. So if we follow this chain of thought, we find that this entity leaves so-called world lines across space-time, Barclay stated proudly. Exactly, and that is what Dr. Jones's device is based on. She seems to have found a way to follow along the line, and where the line meets itself, the device will be able to give a glimpse of the past. He explained to the ensign. Fascinating, Chief. Fascinating. Chief, may I be so bold and request to be transferred to the team overseeing the device? I would relish working for Dr. Jones, the ensign eagerly asked. Well, Ensign, I checked your work this morning and I'm happy to inform you that you have passed the test. Welcome to the team, the chief said, holding up his glass of prune juice to cheers with Ensign Barclay. The recall drone was just arriving in the drone bay where Bruce was waiting. Sheldon, please load the drone into the repair bay. Let's see if we can't prove Dana was wrong for once. Yes, Dr. Kraft. Do I sense sarcasm in your voice? I can check my records for any incorrect statement made by Dr. Jones if you like. Sheldon replied. The drone was now in the repair bay. Remove outer casing and the secondary drones, lay them out on the table in front of me, and you start scanning the primary systems of the drone, Bruce instructed. He enjoyed tinkering and a good puzzle, so he didn't mind checking each and every part of the drone. In addition, proving Dana wrong would be an added bonus that he would milk for the foreseeable future with great enjoyment. Dr. Kraft, I took the liberty of preparing your salami, cheese, and pickle sandwich for lunch. Would you like a hot beverage? Sheldon asked while a robotic arm brought the lunch to Bruce. Just water, and thanks for the sandwich. Did Jake put you up to this? Bruce asked. I can confirm that he instructed me to provide you with lunch should you not find the time to make it to the mess hall. Going by your history of forgetting everything while working, I postulate that he was correct, Sheldon explained. Fair enough. Please show me your scans of the drone in 3D. The drone appeared as a 3D image in front of Bruce. More and more parts were separated of the main body, and the required information was displayed next to it. Sir, my scans show no abnormalities. The drone itself was working well within the parameters you set, Sheldon stated. Great. Well, then leave me check the secondary drones and let nobody disturb me. Bruce instructed and got to work. So, that's the end of chapter 2 and the end of my live reading of this. Yeah, I'll also upload it onto YouTube and make it available on Patreon and as a podcast version as well if you want to re-listen to me read and sometimes stumble through my own book, which I find a little bit hilarious. But yeah. Overall, like I said, I had a great time writing it. I hope if you do decide to buy it, I am truly grateful. And maybe sometime when Corona is contained in a way that travel and all of that can be done again, I can, sign your copies. I'll happily do that. And but for now, this is or was a special episode of Dad's Reading. And as always, thank you for watching. And to the podcast listeners, thank you for listening. Love and respect. Your dad, Steve, is out.